Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Randy sent me notes, and Steve, check out this story from WSET. We've talked before about your car narking on you. Narc is an old school term from the 60s. It's short for narcotics agent. And they were often supposedly going around undercover. And so you'd wonder, hey, is that guy a narc? Is that guy a narc? But it became a verb as to narc somebody out, as to meaning that you turn them into the authorities. And people have known that their cars have been doing that for quite some time now, because your car is recording data about you. And if you get in an accident and they can get that data, then that can get the car to testify against you, figuratively speaking. So Virginia leads the nation with a new speed control law targeting excessive drivers. Virginia's become the first state in the nation to implement the Intelligent Speed Assistant Program as a measure to combat excessive speeding. It's called ISAP. The governor signed the law recently, aimed at enhancing road safety by targeting drivers who exceed 100 miles per hour. Now, here's the thing. 100 would not be good in most places in terms of being legal. However, what about people who do 85 and a 25? 100 might be setting the bar a little bit too high. But under the new legislation, courts can mandate the installation of ISAP technology in the vehicles of drivers caught speeding excessively instead of suspending their licenses. The technology will monitor and collect speed data, which will then be sent to the courts for review. So you'll be given a choice. We can suspend your license, or you can keep driving, but we'll put this thing on there that will tell us how you're driving. A delegate emphasized the importance of the law, stating, if you're out here and you're like a race car driver, no. Race cars are meant for race tracks. Street cars are for streets, he said. And if people feel like they don't want to be safe and they want to be excessive drivers, courts can remove their license or give them this option. So I do like it when somebody comes along with a new form of punishment. If they say, hey, it's optional. You can always go old school if you want, but here's an option for you. Some Virginia residents support the initiative. One local driver said, I think it's good to have that technology in a car. I can't think of a time where you need to be going more than 100 miles an hour. As a defensive driver, you certainly don't want anybody going that fast around you or your children when they're on the road. However, the law has its critics. Another Virginia driver expressed concerns about the restrictions, saying, if there's an emergency, medical, I certainly would absolutely go over 100 miles an hour if it's required, or if it's safe enough. Then I would do that. And I certainly would not want the government to put any device in my car that would restrict me from doing that. Well, I think if you were in an emergency and you drove your car too fast and the court said, hey, the ISAP narked you out and said you were doing too fast the other day. And you said, oh, I had to drive my dying child to the hospital and I can prove it. I suspect the court might look at that and go, okay, makes sense. Driving instructor who was interviewed for the story said he has questions about the effectiveness. If a person has to put it in their car, I don't think it'll bother them because they're not going to be doing 100 every day. 30 miles over the speed limit would be the right way to make the law, and that would definitely slow people down. The ISAP program is set to begin on July 1st of 2026. Tampering with or removing the technology from a vehicle will be classified as a Class 1 misdemeanor. And so I'll be honest, the biggest complaint I have about this is that if somebody was going to wire something into my car, I worry about them screwing the wiring up. I've known so many people back in the day who bought a really cool stereo like Crutchfield and put it in their car, and their car suddenly had electronic problems. Or people who've taken their car someplace to have something done to it with the electronics, and it's had some issues now. And so I don't know how this thing's hooked up. It might just be that you have to get power to it, and that's it. And that might not be that difficult of a thing to hook up. But I was a little perplexed when I saw the headline, because I assumed what they're going to do was create a device that would be a governor and would cap how fast the car would drive. And I thought, oh, because that'd be interesting. Because remember, they've got those devices that you have to blow into if you've been busted for drunk driving and they want to let you drive, but make sure you're not drunk when you're doing it. And they can order you to put an interlock device on your car, which costs money, by the way. And then to start your car, you've got to blow into it. And a lot of people are going to say, but Steve, anybody can blow into it. Yeah, of course, there's ways to get around almost anything, okay? I'm just describing the device to you. But my point is, when I saw the headline, I was thinking, oh, they're going to put a governor on your car to make sure you physically cannot drive that fast. But no. What they're doing is they're gathering the data and they're uploading it. And somebody, someplace can look at the data and see how fast you drove. And so I don't know if it's going to be recording exact locations and so on, so they could actually say, hey, you were on this street doing this fast. Or if they're going to simply be able to look at it and go, hey, it shows you were doing 95 miles an hour. There are no places in the state, public roadways, where you can do 95. Now, of course, you could say, if it doesn't contain GPS data, oh, I took it to a track and I was doing a track day out there. But I don't know how much other data it includes, but it'll be interesting to see what happens because I wonder about this. The technology will monitor and collect speed data, which will then be sent to the courts for review. Doesn't mention GPS location data or anything like that, simply speed data. So I assume it's going to say, at this moment, he was driving this fast. At this moment, she was driving this fast, whatever that might be. And I'm sure many of you know this. But in many states, of course, you can get speeding tickets with points associated with them. And so like 0 to 10 over might be 1 point. 10 to 20 over might be 2 points. And the points climb the worse you're speeding. And there are some states which will say at this many miles an hour above the speed limit, you are considered to be driving recklessly. And I've heard stories, I've had friends driving through the wrong states, doing, say, 25 over, who spent time in jail. And it's a dangerous proposition because, like, I know the laws in Michigan very, very well. Very, very well. I'm an attorney here. But if you said, Steve, what are the laws in Virginia? I'd be like, I don't know. But I seem to recall they're really, really tough on super speeders. I think they are. And that's one of the things about the Cannonball Run records and all that stuff. I've had friends who've done the Cannonball, and it's amazing how short they've gotten that elapsed time down to. But they do that, and you can do the math on this, take how long it took them, and then take how far they drove, and you divide one of them into the other one, and you get so many miles per hour. And if you look at the numbers they come up with, those numbers often appear to exceed the posted speed limit, such that many of the Cannonball guys will announce that they set a record about 366 days after they set the record, just to be on the safe side. And I've heard of people doing these runs getting pulled over for speeding, and I've also heard of them being ticketed doing these runs for speeding. But I've yet to hear of anybody getting in much more trouble than that. And I'm wondering if it's ever happened. It may have, where somebody is zooming along and run past a police officer with a radar gun and goes, whoa, haven't seen those numbers in a while, and pulls somebody over and, like, say, I don't know, impounds a car, makes an arrest. Haven't heard of that happening with a Cannonball driver. But maybe it has happened. So I don't know. A lot of the Cannonball stuff is very secretive. Although they do come out more and talk more and more about it, a lot of stuff has probably happened that we haven't heard about. That's what makes me wonder. But here we are in Virginia, a state that I've heard is already a little rough on drivers who speed. They're going to be the first in the nation with a new speed control law targeting excessive drivers, where the excessive drivers will have the option as part of their punishment to have this device put in their car that will track their driving speeds in real time and report them to the court, just to try to keep you on the straight and narrow and slow. So Randy, thanks for sending that from WSET. Bridget Kelly wrote that. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. My idea of housework is to sweep the room with a glance.